Hey guys, tax attorney Joshua Sells here, another episode of Tax Law Guy. Hey, today I wanted to talk to you about the new law that was passed in 2021, the Corporate Transparency Act. Now this is a big deal, okay? This is going to be in force starting in 2024, January 1st, 2024. And in a nutshell, what this law, this new bipartisan, mind you, bipartisan law says is that on the effective date, January 1st, 2024, if you have an LLC, partnership, a corporation, certain corporations, that you actually have to register with the Treasury Department, specifically with the with a department within the Treasury, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. You have to register with them the beneficial ownership information of the person who beneficially owns the entity, okay? So as an example, if you own an LLC, a single member that owns the LLC, if you don't fall for any of the exemptions, this law requires you to actually register as the owner of the LLC within the Treasury Department database. So we're going to talk about that today. It's a big deal. Folks have a lot of questions about it. And it kind of sprang up on a lot of people. Again, it's been on the books since 2021 when Congress passed the legislation, but it's going into effect in a few months from now, January 1st, 2024. So let's talk about that today on this episode of Tax Law Guy. All right, welcome back. Again, talking about the beneficial ownership information reporting requirements, again, under the Corporate Transparency Act. The legislation has been passed. It goes into effect January 1st, 2024. And so we're going to talk about that today. The Treasury Department has the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and they're charged with basically keeping the financial aspect of the United States secure. Anything that's related to financial crimes, they govern as part of the Treasury Department. And so as part of that, effective January 1st of this year, beneficial ownership information has to be reported to the Treasury Department through FinCEN.gov. Again, that's the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network website. And so that information has to be registered if you indirectly or directly own or control a company. So we're going to address some of the questions that come up regarding this today. Again, this is meant to be a rather comprehensive guide on this legislation based on what we know now. Again, the government will continue to update the rules as issues come up. But this is based on as the statute and the current regulations as of today. Again, we're in August 2023. So this is obviously subject to change. And so currently, if you wanted to form an LLC or a corporation, you do that under state law. And so here in Ohio, for example, you would register with the Secretary of State of the state of Ohio. You would file articles to either create the corporation or the LLC, and then lo and behold, you would have the entity. As with most states, you don't have to file the owner of the entity. Only the person who is filing or creating the entity would be listed. There are many third-party companies that you can engage to create that entity. So your name theoretically doesn't have to be anywhere in the public domain for starting an LLC or a corporation or a partnership, for example. So under this new law, the requirement is that you have to disclose to the government, again, this is not public information, but you have to report beneficial ownership information to the U.S. Department of the Treasury. Again, because that information is not reported at the state level, the Congress passed this law requiring the beneficial ownership information to be reported in a consolidated way to the Treasury Department. And again, this is information that will not be made public, but it has to be reported to the government. And so one of the first questions that we get based on this law is, do I need to report this now? I have an LLC. Maybe I have shares of a corporation. Do I need to report it now? The answer to that question is no, not yet. Again, while this is currently legislation, and as far as it's been passed, signed into law, the reporting requirement does not start until January 1st, 2024. The Treasury Department hasn't even rolled out the actual website. I'm sure they're working on it, but they haven't even rolled out the actual website for reporting beneficial ownership information. So the next question we get a lot is, when do I actually need to report this, and where do I go? So again, we gave you that website, FinCEN.gov, and check the comments below. That's going to be in the comment section below. But FinCEN.gov /BOI for beneficial ownership information, and the Treasury Department will notify us on that site when it is time. But again, January 1st is when the initial beneficial ownership report must be made. Businesses will have, because this is again a new law, will have until January 1st, 2025 to report that beneficial ownership information. So those are the timelines that we're dealing with. And again, the Treasury Department has indicated there will not be a fee to register. Usually when you think about government registration, usually there's always a fee, right? But that is not going to be put into play. There is not going to be a fee to register your beneficial ownership. And so obviously the next question is, what companies then are going to be required to report beneficial ownership information using FinCEN? And so only companies that they refer to as reporting companies are required. Now, there are two different types. There's a domestic reporting company. Now, a domestic reporting company is a corporation, a limited liability company, or any other entity created by the filing of a document with a Secretary of State of any similar office under the law of a state or Indian tribe. So any of the 50 states or Indian tribe where a filing is made with the Secretary of State to create another entity, that is a domestic reporting company. Corporations, LLCs, LLPs, LPs, general partnerships, any of those entities created under state law, filed with the Secretary of State's office of that state, is a domestic reporting company. Now, there's also the foreign reporting company, and that's defined under the statute as a corporation, limited liability company, or other entity formed under the law of a foreign country and registered to do business in any U.S. state or any tribal jurisdiction by the filing of a document with a Secretary of State or any similar office under the law of a U.S. state or Indian tribe. So basically, a foreign entity that registers to do business in the United States, that is a foreign reporting company. Now, in a nutshell, now most of my viewers, you're going to fall under that domestic reporting company. So absent any exemption, we'll talk about those in just a second. If you have an LLC, partnership, corporation, and we'll talk about the percentage requirement, and you have more than 25% ownership, or there's an or here, we'll talk about this in just a second, you execute control over it. So maybe you don't even own it. Maybe you got hired in, you're the president of this entity, maybe you're the manager of an LLC, you don't even own it, but you call the shots and run the day-to-day operations. Hey, guess what? You are probably a beneficial owner, and you would need to register under this act. So it's very broad, with the exception, we'll talk about these exceptions and these exemptions, but generally speaking, if you have an interest in an LLC, corporation, partnership, more than 25%, you need to register. You need to register the beneficial ownership come January 1st of this coming year. Now, if it's a dormant LLC, hey, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you probably have a couple of those, right? Maybe you started an LLC with hopes of starting a business, never did. It's dormant, right? You haven't exercised any business activity. That's not going to fall under these rules, okay? Now, let's talk about those exemptions, okay? I told you we would talk about those. Again, are you with me? If not, leave a question below. Again, we're trying to explain what this beneficial ownership information recording requirement is under this new act. And if you have an LLC, LP corporation, you need to pay attention to this. This is important. There are filing requirements. So the exemptions, here are the exemptions. There are 23 types that the Corporate Transparency Act exempts 23 different types of entities from the requirement. I'm just going to go through these. These really are not going to apply to most of my listeners. Certain types of securities reporting issuers, a U.S. governmental authority, the government's not going to report it on itself, certain types of banks, federal or state credit unions, a bank holding company, certain types of money transmitting or money service businesses, broker or dealer, securities exchanges, other entities registered with the SEC, certain types of investment companies, certain types of venture capital fund advisors, insurance companies, state licensed insurance producers, Commodity Exchange Act registered entities, public accounting firms registered in accordance with Section 102 of Sarbanes-Oxley, certain types of regulated public utilities, financial market utility, certain pooled investment vehicles, certain types of tax-exempt entities, entities that are assisting those tax-exempt entities, large operating companies with more than 20 full-time employees, more than $5 million in gross receipts, and an operating presence in the U.S. So think about your big corporations, right? I mean, that's already public information. You don't need to report on that. The subsidiaries of certain exempt entities and certain types of inactive entities that were in existence on or before January 1st, 2020. That right there, that last one. Let's talk about that. That means that you can't start an LLC today and say it's dormant and not register it. The dormant, the inactive entities exception or exemption, it applies to LLCs that were created before this was even passed into law. Again, that was January 1st, 2020. And so those are the exemptions, probably not going to apply to you. Most likely you need to register. You're going to fall under this as a reporting company. So let's talk a little bit about who are the beneficial owners. I alluded to this. Now, obviously, you own an LLC. You're the only one that owns it. It's your LLC. Maybe you're a real estate broker, something like that. You're the beneficial owner, right? That's easy, right? You're the only one. You can not only do you control it, but you also own it 100%. You are a beneficial owner, and you are going to have to file under the beneficial ownership information reporting. And so that does apply to you. Now, here is the general clause, okay? A beneficial owner is any individual who directly or indirectly exercises substantial control over the reporting company. What's a reporting company? We just talked about it, right? It's pretty much every LLC, every corporation, every partnership, except for those exemptions. So a beneficial owner is any individual who directly or indirectly exercises substantial control over the reporting company, or who directly or indirectly owns or controls 25% or more of the ownership interest of the reporting company. Now, let's break this down. This is going to take a little bit of time, but let's break this down. First of all, let's deal with ownership. Okay, ownership, that's an easy one. You're the only owner of the LLC. You own it. You're the beneficial owner. Okay, that's you. What about this one? You put your LLC interest in a trust. Okay, maybe you're like, I'm going to try to for other reasons, right? You still are indirectly owning that LLC. So under the legislation and the regulations, you would still be the beneficial owner, and you still need to report information on you. The trust, it's to be seen. We're still waiting for some regulations to actually give some detail on this, but you are the beneficial owner, so directly or indirectly. And so if you own directly or indirectly 25% or more of the ownership interest of the reporting company, you have to report as a beneficial owner. Now you may say, well, you know what? I own it 100%, but I don't do anything. I don't exercise substantial control. Well, guess what? You have to report as the beneficial owner, okay? And whoever actually runs it would also have to report as the beneficial owner. That's right. There may be a situation where more than one person of a 100% owned LLC has to report as a beneficial owner. The statute is clear. Substantial control or ownership. Okay, so there may be a scenario where you have two beneficial owners over a 100% owned LLC. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that substantial control. So that depends on who actually controls or exercises control over the entity. That may be the president. That may be a senior officer. It has to do with the rights that they have to exercise control over the business. Hey, the statute identifies, the regulations identify some examples and some additional definitions of what that substantial control is, or some examples in there. And so if you basically are calling the shots, if you are running the day-to-day, again, company president, officers, exercising substantial influence, you likely are a beneficial owner of the reporting company because you exercise substantial control. Now, ownership interest we talked about, that could be shares of the stock. You own more than 25%. That could very well just be that you own the entire LLC, right? There are some attribution rules that are going to be in play here. You think about it this way: well, I'll own 24%. My wife will own 24%. My kids will own 24%. That kind of thing. Like nobody owns 25. But there's attribution. It's going to actually be attributed to you. Those attribution rules are found in the regulations. Basically, if you think you found a way to get out of this, of not reporting, you haven't, because it all gets attributed back to you. And so you would be still a beneficial owner. In that scenario where you try to use the family, you actually would have created multiple beneficial owners that would have to self-report. They've outlined ways to avoid people trying to get around this with those attribution rules. Again, those who exercise substantial control and those who have more than 25% ownership. Maybe it is a scenario where, hey, there's a corporation and I have a 20% interest and that's it. My family doesn't have any more. I'm not related to any of the other owners. You're fine. You don't own more than 25% of the company. You are not a beneficial owner. It's only once you hit that 25% mark that you have to report to FinCEN as a beneficial owner. Again, it's really important to understand what exactly is your ownership requirement. Hey, that may change over time, right? There may be a situation where you don't have 25% ownership right now, but next year sometime, hey, maybe because somebody else sold their shares, you now have more than 25%. It is possible where later on you become a beneficial owner and have to report, hey, you may be a beneficial owner now, sell some of your shares, sell the LLC, and no longer qualify as a beneficial owner. You have to report that as well. So there is an ongoing reporting requirement under this act for the beneficial ownership information. And so the next question that we get is what information will a reporting company need to report in addition to information about its beneficial owners? So if the company was created or registered on or after January 1st, 2024, the reporting company, again, the LLC, will need to report information about itself, its beneficial owners, and its company applicants. Again, those company applicants may be the ones who actually create the LLC. Think about a paralegal in a law firm. Maybe they form the LLC. They're going to have to report information on the company applicant. So not just information on the actual company or the LLC or corporation, who actually applied with the Secretary of State to create it, and the actual beneficial owner. And so again, the purpose of this is for the government to be able to have a central database for who actually is running these corporations. Again, the idea is that it's very easy right now for shell corporations, shell entities, for potential criminal activity to transpire through them. So by having this central repository, if you will, what they believe is they'll be able to quickly access information on who is the beneficial ownership of an entity for law enforcement purposes. Who can access that information? We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But let's finish up here really quick with talking about the reporting requirements. So we said that company applicant, right? But the information about the company itself. Now watch this. You have for the LLC, you have to report its legal name, trade names, if it's doing business as, the current street address of its principal place of business, the jurisdiction that it was formed under, so it was an Ohio LLC, and its TIN, or taxpayer identification number, EIN is what we would call it, if it has one. Those are some very important pieces of information. Again, this is not public, okay? This is not public information, but nonetheless, you have to disclose this to FinCEN when the reporting period opens. What about the beneficial owners? Now, you're not going to like this. I don't like this. This is, anytime you have to give out this kind of information, not a big fan of it. The beneficial owners have to give their name, date of birth, address, a unique identifying number from an acceptable identification document, social security number, the name of the state or jurisdiction that issued the identification document, and the address, the residential address where you live. A P.O. box is not acceptable. So, you have to disclose all of that information as the beneficial owner. That's not fun. That's not cool, right? I don't like that. I don't like putting my residential address out there. But nonetheless, that is the requirement. Hey, as tax law guy, as Attorney Joshua says, my job is to give you this information. And what you do with it is your choice. But that is the current law and the regulations. And now, the government has assured us that this information will be secure. Keep in mind, most of this information, they already have anyways. You file a tax return, right? So the government has this information, but the idea that there's going to be a central repository where all of this information is housed is slightly intimidating and concerning. We're going to be monitoring this very closely, and we certainly hope that the government does hold up its end of the deal here and make this very secure, because there is certainly opportunity for scammers to try to access this information. So again, we talked about company information has to be reported, the beneficial owner. Okay, as the owner of my law firm, I have to report as the beneficial owner, give my name, birthday, address, residential address, an ID that verifies me, my driver's license number, a picture. Not very cool. But anyways, that brings us to our next question. We talked about where we are going to report on that website, but how will I report my company's beneficial ownership information? They tell us through an electronic secure filing system that is currently being developed. Now, it is August. The filing period opens January 1st, 2024. My advice, or excuse me, not really advice, my guess, this is going to get delayed. I think it's going to get delayed. If I know the government, they're not good with technology. I think IRS, right? I deal with the IRS all the time. I have a hunch this is probably going to get pushed back another year. I don't think they're going to be ready for the mass amount of information and data that's going to be flowing in. Okay, so I personally think it's going to get pushed back. We'll see, but again, that is what the current requirement is. The beneficial owner, we talked about that. The applicant, whoever actually applied for the LLC, and information on the entity itself. Those are the three reporting entities, if you will, or reporting groups. And again, for those beneficial owners, substantial control, or ownership over 25%. And basically you have to, the idea is we have ABC LLC, okay, just to throw on an LLC, who actually benefits from this LLC? Who is the one behind the curtain? That's the idea. And now we go to our next question. Who's going to access this information? What's the reason here? Why do they want a central database with all of this information? Why do they want to know where my house is? If they have my LLC address, why do they want to know where my house is as the beneficial owner? Well, they say the only ones under the Corporate Transparency Act, these are the only groups that FinCEN is allowed to disclose beneficial information, ownership information, is U.S. federal agencies engaged in national security, intelligence, and law enforcement activities. That sounds fun. Think Homeland Security, right? Maybe there's a terrorist cell operating and they're using a shell corporation They want to be able to actually see who benefits from that corporation, because naturally, I mean, the terrorists will log on to FinCEN on January 1st and, give their address. I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, not really, unfortunately. I think what we're going to see here is bad actors are not going to comply with the law. It's going to be the law-abiding citizens that are trying to stay in compliance who are going to report. As we'll see, there are some benefits of this, but as far as for law enforcement purposes, I really don't think that it's going to accomplish what we are aiming to do here, because again, the bad actors aren't. A terrorist isn't going to form an LLC as a shell corporation to buy dangerous goods or weapons and then list themselves as the beneficial owner. Anyways, going on to the second one: state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies with court authorization. So a local police department could access this if they get court authorization. The Department of Treasury, it's their system, so they're already authorized. Financial institutions, listen to this now, financial institutions, banks, think banks, using beneficial ownership information to conduct legally required customer due diligence, provided the financial institutions have their customer consent to retrieve the information. What this means is, we're going to see this. You go to open an account for your new LLC. In order for the bank to open that account, and this kind of goes under the Patriot Law, in order for that bank to open an account for you, they're going to require you to sign a form giving permission to use FinCEN's system here to verify that you're actually the beneficial owner, the one who's opening the bank account. Okay, so we're going to see that. And that's where they're going to get you. That's exactly it. Because if you want to open a bank account, you're not going to be able to unless you're in FinCEN already registered as the beneficial owner. So that's where they're going to get the average Joe, right there. Okay, as with the banks. Because if you want to open a bank account for your LLC, you're going to have to sign a release form to the bank, giving them permission to check the database. And if you're not in it, they're not opening the account. Okay, so that's going to be how they enforce that. The next one is federal and state regulators assessing financial institutions for compliance with legally required customer due diligence obligations. So the bank regulators, go back to that last one about the banks. The bank regulators can make sure that the bank actually did their job. And finally, foreign law enforcement agencies, so other countries' law enforcement agencies, who submit qualifying requests for the information through a U.S. federal agency. Not really a fan of that one, but other foreign agencies can potentially access our information. Now, there are strict requirements with the Corporate Transparency Act for each of these groups of requesters. We'll know more as time goes on, but not really excited about this new law. Now, the question always comes up: how is FinCEN going to protect beneficial ownership information reported to it? Now, federal law does require, they did include this, okay? This is included. They are required to protect it. So they say they are going to build a secure IT system to secure this information. Again, it hasn't been built yet. And this is supposed to go into effect on January. They just got done processing tax returns. It took them a long time to do just tax returns and process refunds. I don't think this is going to roll out as scheduled. And I could be wrong. Maybe I am. But I am not sure if this is going to roll out on schedule. So that is pretty much everything about this that we know now about the new beneficial ownership information reporting requirements. If you check in the comments below, I'm going to post some FAQs, some additional information. We're going to be monitoring this extensively, but as of now, just know, mark it on your calendars, January 1st, 2024 is when the beneficial ownership information reporting period begins. We're going to see if what happens. I almost forgot. There are also supposedly, we mentioned in there, if your beneficial ownership information changes or if it's not accurate or you have to update your home address, there's going to be a mechanism to correct and update records. So we're going to see what happens with this. Again, we're going to be monitoring this very closely over the next several months. My gut reaction, based on many years working with the agencies, particularly the Treasury Department and the IRS, I believe this will ultimately be delayed but we will see nonetheless. Hey, keep watching Tax Law Guy. We're going to keep an eye on this. We will let you know as soon as we have information about it. But again, if you have any questions right now, drop a comment below. I certainly will do my best with the information that we have to answer that. But hey, until then, thanks for watching Tax Law Guy, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.